What's going on, everybody? I think my wife might have fell asleep putting the baby to bed, which kind of sucks, but I'm sure she'll text me whenever if she does wake up. Anyways, so on this video, I'm guessing you've already seen the title by now, so you know what it's about. And I don't know exactly at this very moment what the title's going to be, but I think it's going to say something to the effect of how to deprogram from Christianity. Something to that effect is my guess, but I'm not absolutely positive at this point yet what this title is going to be. So that's all you're going to get from me right now at this very moment. But that's in a nutshell kind of what I want to talk about. That being said, I want to get a few things crystal clear. And for both the purposes of helping anybody who's got programming by Christianity, who's trying to either do magical practices, witchcraft, old pagan practices, whatever, and might have resistance because they think that there is deeply embedded, it's not really think, it's kind of a knowing, but I don't necessarily think it comes from the religion, from the priests, the pastors, the teachers, the people that taught our parents, whoever. Everybody listening to me right now may not come from a Christian background or organized religion background that has kind of embedded in our head that, powers, manifestation, witchcraft, anything, honoring the sun, planets, the solstices are dark. Not all these religions, not all these people may have that, but it's going to serve the purpose to help you along with that. So I'm going to play a clip that it's a clip from Robert Spears' video, but it's a clip that he plays on his video, and it mostly goes into Christmas, Saturnalia, some Norse stuff, basically. And the woman talking must be a hardcore Christian, I'm guessing, who believes in the true Christianity and thinks that the Christianity that was created is not the true Christianity. But there's a lot of things in there she says that's kind of crazy, just to give a few examples. And we know that there was human sacrifice done. We know that, okay? We can pretend like our ancestors didn't do that, but that would be silly. And I find it very funny and obviously hypocritical that, we know that the Jews didn't necessarily, if you believe in the Jesus story, but even if you don't, we know there was crucifixion done. And so putting a guy on a cross for his crimes and letting him die there is okay. But we don't know under the circumstances of what these sacrifices were being done. You can read some stuff and it'll say whatever. But, if you had a family member that was sick, dying, well, why not turn that into a sacrifice? And I know that sounds fucked up, but maybe it could have been just like what's that called? Jesus, so they don't suffer, you know what I mean? Put them out of misery. If your dog is dying slowly, you put them out of its misery, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. The word just escapes me right now, but it'll come back to me. But what if these pagan people had criminals or people that were against them, and this is how they did it? You know what I mean? Other cultures did it before them, cultures did it after them. Who knows? I don't know. I can't tell you for sure. I've read some things that point in those directions. I've read other things that are completely the opposite. Most of the time, it's the opposite. It's people like the Christians condemning the pagans, saying, yeah, they sacrifice people all the time, and did orgies, and even let their children get involved as some kind of initiation, jubilee, I think she even says that in this part, but we weren't there, we don't know. And, it's like nowadays, we hear a lot of crazy stories online, conspiracy theory channels, and, websites are full of these crazy things that go on. And obviously, there's probably some people that do some crazy things. There's a lot of couples that you wouldn't even know that are swingers and like to get freaky and like to trade wives or, whatever the case is. And so these things happen, and for people to shit on stuff that we don't necessarily know what happened, we just have one person's account of it, which is coming from a polarized view, who wants the person reading it to think that those people are bad and we are good. You know, it's like, you gotta take that shit with a grain of salt. But what I like about this is, at the same time as this girl, this woman, who's, I want to say from somewhere in England, Britain, is shitting on paganism and the witchcraft and Norse and even the Romans, doing their mythologies and all that. She's shitting on all these because she's for some type of, I'd say, some kind of Catholic. But she also goes into, and this is something I've only read once, and I never even gave it a second thought, and for some reason it caught my eye now, but how Christ's Mass, okay, Saturnalia ended up being Christ's Mass, okay, and it got so bad because even when it was for Christ, because the one thing you'll notice is that these pagan traditions were deeply rooted in people to the point where the church stopped trying to fight everybody because these things were part of them, part of their culture. Like, they weren't giving this shit up, so they adopted it. And that's the one thing she talks about, how even in the scripture it says when Jesus would have technically been born, but they decided to overlook that and take Mithra's birth date, which was Persian, then adopted by Romans, according to her. But the one thing I really like is how she shits on paganism and all these cults and trying to make us out to these naughty, freaky, crazy fucks that just want to have orgies and do magic and spurn our fucking fellow people alive. But then she goes into how Christmas was forbidden, banned for like over 200 years. I mean, in some places it got so bad. You know what I mean? Christmas was banned. You know what I mean? Lately, Halloween, you know, shit gets canceled around Christmas time. You can't have too many people over because of COVID and shit like that. But this shit got banned because of whatever. You know, this priest saying, you guys think your God would want you drinking and doing all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. So what I like about it is, I mean, she's against Christianity in the sense of she thinks Christianity is this form of Christianity, not the form she believes in, but this form of Christianity is just a pagan form. It was just all done for the purposes of uniting people so they can have some kind of government, some working whatever, and, you know, there's a lot of give and take there, right? So a lot of Christian beliefs were allowed to be there, but a lot of pagan beliefs were allowed to be there. There was a lot of liberal and wiggle room there, and she doesn't like that. But I just want to show people, because I made a Christmas episode, I think a week before Christmas, saying there's something deeper about Christmas that goes way beyond Christ, that goes way back into our pagan roots, that I don't know what it is, but I know feeling bad about celebrating Christmas because it's technically Christian and I'm a witch and Christians have done all these bad things to me. It doesn't work with me anymore. So I put in an episode and I showed how even Uncle Birch says to celebrate Christmas, and he's once probably even more adamant about being against Christianity than I am. But he also says it. So I thought it was very fitting to play this now because it'll show from a Christian that, and I'm not saying Christianity today is the same as what happened when they decided to take on pagan practices. I think there's been a lot of evolution that happened, a lot of, okay, so it says in the Bible, but then priests like to make up their own things, and if it flies and it worked in their favor and it fit their narrative, then they kind of went along with it, and maybe things got changed in the Bible. We obviously know that. There's things added to the Bible against witchcraft. If I can, I'm also going to show you how Judaism was polytheistic prior to this. I mean, Thunderbirds has videos about it with, I think, the information, like the actual sources. If not, it's not hard to find. But I already have a few videos on here I want to play, so I don't know if we'll get to play that. But it's going to show the people that get mad at me or drop my channel whenever they think I'm shitting on Christianity, or people that drop my channel when they think I'm too nice to Christianity, or for the people that send me messages like, I plead Jesus' blood, or, you know, weird shit like that. I'm just going to show them, like, what are you really worshiping here? I mean, not everybody who sends you messages is worshiping or is Christian or whatever the case is, but you need to really understand that this religion has more paganism in it than you or anybody else will care to fucking even want to admit. So if you are the type of person that wants to learn the law of attraction and magic and how to manifest, and you're interested in Norse stuff or witchcraft or ceremonial magic, but you don't have to feel bad. If you believe in Christianity, even more than that, a lot of these stories are probably derived from way back paganism and different old-ass fucking religions before Christianity, and it was just adopted and the names were changed. So that's what I want to show here. And then if I have time after that, I want to play a few things that show that prior to, let's say, the age of Aries, because after Aries was Pisces, and potentially now we're going into Aquarius. Before that would have been age of Taurus, and during that time, pretty sure women were ruling the world. And I can't prove it, and I'm not even going to try to say that's exactly 100% accurate, but I think women were way more powerful and in power at one point, and I think that's why, when Old Testament, that's where Adam and Eve's story, Eve is the bad person, and even more than that, they added Lilith in there, either before Eve or whatever the case was, but she was also bad. Right? She was the demon, baby fucking creator monster, making men have sex with her every night and taking their semen to make more demon children, which is probably more like a metaphor for your thoughts, creating entities or thought forms, but nonetheless, you know what I mean? There's been a lot of, and then Mary Magdalene, she's bad, and there's just so much crap, you know what I mean? There's just so much shitting on women, and I think it's because, when one gender is on top, while the other gender, eventually the power gets to their head. So I'm not saying that this women race or whatever would have been perfect the whole time, but eventually they would have had to, maybe the power got to their head or someone got in power that was a little crazy, and then they had to be overthrown, and so then what happens? Well, then men take over, men go over top of women to the point where they suppress them, and now women have to come back over. So I'm going to lay some groundwork for that after if I get a chance, but I guess first right now I'll play you that part that I want to play about Christmas and that Christian chick. I really don't know what she is. Just for everybody out there who thinks I crap on Christianity and or don't know what I'm talking about, or for anybody out there who's working on deprogramming from Christianity, well, you may not have to if you can just reprogram or redefine what Christianity is to you by listening to something like this often and doing research into this and finding out for yourself that this is actually accurate, that old paganism and older spiritualities are what formed Christianity, because they learned from those myths. But anyways, by that'll help you. And for everybody out there who's a self-righteous Christian who thinks I'm doing things with the devil, well, you might want to take a better look at your religion, And you can say, well, that's not how I do it. I do it the right way. Oh, yeah, what's the right way? You tell me what's the right way. Your interpretation of the fucking old book that's myths and parables and fucking metaphors? Yeah, okay. And we can all do that. That means we can all find the right way. And all our right ways don't have to be the same right way. Anyways, here we go. This is Robert Sepper. He is an anthropologist, among other things. Which means he's kind of like, to be honest, I don't exactly know. Something like an archaeologist, someone who studies the things that are dug up, old ruins, and, tries to date things, and a bunch of that shit. So, as far as I know, look it up, though, and maybe I will, so I can let you know exactly what it is.
Sun on December 25th.
In the Northern Hemisphere during late December, the days are at their shortest lengths, and the nights are at their longest. For those of the pagan world, this has always been the greatest time of the year to celebrate and practice the works of darkness. The pagan calendar identifies this period as the winter solstice. It was during the pre-Christian midwinter pagan celebrations of Scandinavia's Norsemen where today's Christmas traditions began. As a means of honoring the pagan sex and fertility god Yule, a 12-day celebration during the month of December was inaugurated. A large single log considered to be a phallic idol was lit on fire and kept burning for 12 days. Animal or human sacrifices were offered in the fire on each of those days. Wild, delirious reveling accompanied the daily sacrifices as drunken participants defiantly strove to make contact with spirits. A 1,000 miles away in pre-Christian Rome, celebrants were paying homage to their own gods during the winter solstice. Witchcraft traditions hold that a number of pagan gods were given birth during this period, including Dionysus, Attis, and Baal, chief male god of fertility and licentiousness. Another pagan god from Persia, identified as Mithra, was said to have been born specifically on December 25th. Mithra was the god of the unconquerable sun, the god of the light between heaven and earth, worshipped at that time by an influential Roman cult. His birth symbolized an end to the long nights and a return to the dominance of the sun. During the month-long winter solstice celebration, courts in Rome were closed. Any and all crimes were allowed. Homosexuality, cross-dressing, and uncontrolled debauchery reigned supreme. Rome's order was turned upside down. Even children were allowed to join in the drunken orgies as part of the Juvenalia celebration. By 270 AD, the Roman Emperor Aurelian had made it official, setting aside a 7-day period from December the 17th through the 24th, culminating in an exchange of gifts on December the 25th to celebrate the birth of the sun god. This Roman orgy to end all orgies later became known as Saturnalia, in honor of the god Saturn, the god of excess. Roman soldiers invading Britain brought with them their pagan orgiastic traditions. Upon taking root in England, Saturnalia became known as the Festival of Fools, reigned over by the Lord of Misrule. By the 4th century, the influential government-sanctioned Church of Rome, unable to outlaw the growing number of pagan practices, chose instead to adopt them into their so-called official Christianity. The Church believed this would attract more pagans to their fold. Up until this time, the birthday of Jesus Christ, the Jewish Messiah, had not been celebrated at all. Ignoring scriptures, however, indicating that the birth probably did not occur during the winter, the Church nevertheless confused biblical history and made Jesus' birthday coincide with the pagan god Mithra. The birth date of the sun god had now become the birth date of the Son of God. It was hoped that the pagan celebrations of Saturnalia would merge into this new legally sanctioned form of Christianity. The Church's practice of changing the dates of Christian events to coincide with pagan festivals continued, and by the 7th century, Pope Gregory I had ordered Augustine of Canterbury to incorporate any and all pagan practices and customs into the expanding Roman Catholic Church. During the Middle Ages, the debased Mardi Gras atmosphere of what was now known as Christ's Mass had reached a fevered pitch. Common practices included open sex in the streets, rioting, murder, and a number of pagan druidic Halloween rituals. This blood-drenched celebration got so out of hand that by 1652, following the execution of King Charles I, Christ's Mass was finally outlawed in England. A religious reform movement began sweeping the country, led by Puritan Oliver Cromwell. The Puritans took the biblical mandate seriously, which commanded that Christianity remain pure and separate from paganism. Despite their noble efforts, the celebration simply went underground, and by 1656, after only 4 short years under the ban, the public's demand for the legalization of Christ's Mass had become insurmountable. The appointment of Charles II to the throne restored England's monarchy, and with it the celebration of Christ's Mass. The Puritans had lost England, but they held high hopes for the New World. Following England's lead in 1659, the colonies of America had likewise outlawed Christmas. For 200 years, the clergy in New England battled to keep the riotous celebrations honoring the pagan god Saturn from infiltrating the New World. The Reverend Cotton Mather had warned in a Christmas Day sermon in 1712, "Can you, in your conscience, think that your Holy Savior is honored by hard drinking, lewd reveling, and by a mass fit for none but Bacchus or Saturn?" But the public's taste for sin and revelry persisted. In 1828 gang rioting during the Saturnalia-like Christmas celebrations got so bad that cities such as New York were forced to institute a professional police force for the first time in order to control the savagery.
Christmas was not only not widely celebrated. In many cases, many places, Christmas celebrations were actually outlawed.
By the mid-19th century, American churches were the last remaining holdout in the war against the validation of Christmas. However, they too finally succumbed as a result of the efforts of the American Sunday School Society, who began advocating Christmas programs for children as a method of filling the pews. The society argued that children could be taught about the birth of Christ through the reenactment of the Nativity. They also offered candy and treats to the children as a means of enticing families into accepting the holiday, despite its notorious history and blatantly pagan roots. The successful technique of bribing children with candy would later be used on an unsuspecting American populace in the effort to promote the acceptance of the pagan rituals of Halloween. However, it was the work of England's most popular writer, Charles Dickens, whose ghostly 1843 book, A Christmas Carol, cemented the Christmas holiday in the hearts of Americans forever. By 1875, the Puritans had been beaten, and by 1890, all American states had voted to make Christmas a legal holiday. Today's tradition of the Christmas Yule log stems directly from the worship of the pre-Christian Scandinavian fertility god Yule.
Another good example of the pagan elements of Christmas is the whole concept of Yule and the Yule log. The very term is derived from the Norse god Yule, spelled J-U-L. And every year around Christmas time, a huge log was cut down and fashioned into a fertility symbol and then burned for 12 days. And on each successive day, a new sacrifice to the god Yule was performed in the fire, and a new sacrificial victim was burned to death. Sometimes, but not always, these sacrificial victims were human beings.
Mistletoe, when used in the casting of Wiccan or Druidic spells, could render a woman helpless and open to sexual exploitation. This is where we get our custom of hanging mistletoe in doorways today, and if a woman is caught underneath, she may be kissed and must not resist.
The fir tree, the mistletoe, all of these things typically come from overtly pagan traditions, typically from Northern Europe, German, Norse, and English.
Likewise, evergreen trees have always represented sex and fertility in pagan cultures. During the winter solstice, trees would be chopped down, brought inside, set up, and decorated as idols for worship.
The Christmas tree was regarded as a sacred tree. The pagans of Northern Europe typically worshipped trees. They regarded trees and groves as sacred. So the bringing of the tree into the house would be a way of bringing this supernatural source of blessing into your home. That was the whole idea, that there were spirits who resided in the trees.
In the Middle Ages, the tradition of the winter solstice Christmas tree primarily took root in Germany. During his reign, King George I, himself of German extraction, brought the custom to Victorian England. German immigrants settling in Pennsylvania did the same in America during the early 1800s. The concept of Santa Claus has had a long and winding history, with a number of diverse cultures contributing to the composite character we have today. Beginning once again in Scandinavia, Santa's original incarnation was in the form of Odin. Odin would travel the sky during the winter solstice, deciding who would die and who would prosper. Most believers were frightened of this particular time of year. In England, Odin eventually evolved into Father Christmas, who, crowned with sprigs of holly, traveled the countryside getting roaring drunk as part of the Festival of Fools celebration. Frequently, he would be accompanied by a horned goat, ironically the biblical symbol of those who reject the salvation of Jesus Christ. Recognized in various cultures as Krampus, Beelzebub, or Zwart Piet, Black Peter, this assistant of St. Nicholas is best known by his German name, Knecht Ruprecht. Described as a hideous horned creature, the servant Ruprecht was a dark and sinister figure who stood in stark contrast to the saintly Nicholas. Somehow, Father Christmas's companion, the horned goat, had metamorphosized into the foreboding horned devil called Ruprecht. As St. Nicholas traveled from house to house, inquiring about the behavior of children, Ruprecht would drop candy and gifts down the chimney into the good children's shoes which had been placed there. It was from this story that we get our tradition of hanging stockings on the mantle at Christmas time. If able to recite a verse or demonstrate a skill for St. Nicholas, the child would receive a gift. If unable to remember a verse, or if the child had been bad, he or she would receive a switch or a whip. Ruprecht also carried a large sack which he would frequently use to haul away the really bad boys and girls. 19th century writer Theodore Storm, in his story about Knecht Ruprecht, even goes so far as to describe the switches given to the children by Ruprecht as tools to be used in sadomasochistic rituals.
Numen is the Latin term for divinity, or divine presence, divine will, or divine mind. Kronos, or Saturn, was also seen as a universal numen in certain esoteric interpretations, which signifies the hidden, called by Latin Deus Latius, the hidden God, or in other words, the occult principle of all things. According to Varro, an ancient Roman scholar and writer, and I quote, "He that produceth out of himself the hidden seeds and forms of all things, and swalloweth them up into himself again." From here we may enter into a deeper understanding of the ancient mysteries. Some of who we today call pagans believe God to be diffused throughout all things. Plato himself approved of worshiping the invisible God in the sun, moon, and stars as visible images. The Zohar explains the term Ein Sof as follows, and I quote, "Before he gave any shape to the world, before he produced any form, he was alone, without form, and without resemblance to anything else. Who then can comprehend how he was before the creation? Hence, it is forbidden to lend him any form or similitude, or even to call him by his sacred name, or to indicate him by a single letter or a single point." Honorary 33rd degree Freemason Manly P. Hall said, and I quote, "The Kabbalists conceive of the supreme deity as an incomprehensible principle to be discovered only through the process of eliminating, in order, all of its cognizable attributes. That which remains, when every knowable thing has been removed, is Ein Sof, the eternal state of being. Although indefinable, the absolute permeates all space. Abstract to the degree of inconceivability, Ein Sof is an unconditioned state of all things. Substances, essences, and intelligences are manifested out of the inscrutability of Ein Sof. But the absolute itself is without substance, essence, or intelligence." Ein Sof was referred to by Kabbalists as the most ancient of all the ancients. It was always considered as sexless. Its symbol was a closed eye. According to the Kabbalah, Ein Sof Or is the limitless light, an empty, black, silent void that expands itself into boundless proportions, filling itself with metaphysical substance various philosophers have named luminiferous ether, or an electromagnetic azoth. This liquid light substance is an invisible, electromagnetic, radiant energy. Its vibratory emanations are far too subtle to be perceived by or through any of our dense senses. Being an invisible black light, 6,000 years ago, the high priests of ancient Egypt declared, "Behold, our God is a black God, two bricks." This might help to explain not only the black Osiris, but also the black Madonna, the black Kali, and other deities associated with darkness. That said, the white Osiris is the manifest physical universe we perceive and which the Bible calls day. Modern physicists now declare physical substance fundamentally to be comprised of a light substance in vibration. They have yet to declare just what this light vibration might be, however. The smallest physical particle for years has been known as the quark. More recently, an even smaller particle has been revealed, and this science has labeled dark matter. Ein Sof Ur is that dark matter. The night, or dark matter, is the ocean of black liquid light, a living, omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent substance permeating every aspect of all manifest and unmanifest levels of experience. It is absent nowhere, filling all space, filling mineral, vegetable, animal, human kingdoms, and kingdoms beyond. A continuing emanation. Every point exudes its own light and life. Alchemists call this their universal first matter, universal mercury. This is the substance of creation from no thing. The Hindu equivalent to Ein Sof Ur is Mula Prakriti, the root matter. Alchemists from all periods have given it any number of different names, but the principle, one designation, has always been simply water, but a permanent water. My name is Robert Sepper. I'm an independent anthropologist and author. My books are published on Amazon.com. Please consider making a donation.
All right, so you just heard this propaganda slash, I don't know, she's kind of against both Christianity and paganism, which I really love, because it shows the ability. Now, I'm sure there's some Christians out here watching that think, okay, well, that's not my Christianity. Or maybe you see that and you're like, okay, well, as long as I still honor Jesus Christ, I'll be okay. And blah, blah, blah. And, whatever. All the power and loyalty. Well, my point of this is not to be like, ha-ha, fuckers, you're pagan too, even though you don't know it. I think that, but it's not my point. My point is to not say Christianity really is a pagan tradition, because it's not, okay? Christianity has been turned into something completely different. But what I am trying to prove is the point I tried to prove a few times, saying there's old pagan roots, Norse, Germanic, Scandinavian, Egyptian, Greek, fucking Roman, as in not Roman Catholic, but Roman, when they had Diana as a goddess, and Apollo and all this shit. There is old witchcraft that is embedded, old paganism, since witchcraft is of the devil, but old paganism deep inside Christianity. Like, most people think, okay, Christmas, Christ Mass, something we've been celebrating for 2,000 years since the birth of Christ, and it's like, okay. Or maybe most people think after the Council of Nicaea, potentially in 322 or whenever it was, that's when we started celebrating Christmas. It's like, no. So Christmas was a free-for-all that was from these pagan people's beliefs, and I think they said it was in 1890 that it got reestablished. So from 1890 to 1990, from 1990 to 2021, that's 131 years that we've been celebrating Christmas consecutively, let's say. That's it. That ain't fucking long. So most people are celebrating Christmas to think they're nice little Christians and all that. I hate to tell you, but you're more pagan than you are Christmas. If all you do, if you say, okay, you get your kid baptized, you get married in the church, and you don't go to church on Sunday. The only time you go to church is on Easter and potentially on Christmas. Okay, not bad. Christ's Mass. A Mass of Christ, right? Get it? But you put a Christmas tree up, you celebrate Halloween, you do the Easter thing. You're pagan. You're fucking pagan. Because those are all pagan things. They're all from pagan roots. There's nothing about Christianity in those things. The book itself was the doctrine of the actual religion. And they had masses on Sundays and shit like that. That was Christianity as far as I can tell. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know. From what I read, that was the religion. And all the extras, all the holidays, all the weird things like bringing a dead tree in your house, all the mistletoe and deck the halls with boughs of holly, the Yuletide carol, blah, 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 Yule, you know what I mean? I mean, la, 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 all these fucking things are, all the fun parts of Christianity, like the holidays and all that, are all pagan. And does that not make sense? Most people don't understand how Halloween could be a fucking Christian fucking whatever. Most people don't understand how giving gifts and all shit like that could be something that has to do with Christ. And most people will say, okay, well, the wise man gave Jesus gifts and all that. It's like, no. In the 1890s, whenever they implemented it, they started teaching kids in nativity school, church school, the birth of Christ. And that's where the programming really began. And those kids grew up. They had kids. Their kids went to the same school. Those kids grew up, and their kids went to those schools, and those kids grew up. This has only been happening since the 1890s. You think it's been happening since the year 2000, but it's only been since 1890. And before that, all these holidays that are now part of Christianity that have been a lot more calmed down. Like, we don't go around fucking in the streets anymore. But you know, we still party on Christmas. Most people go have a drink or whatever, stay over. Sometimes bars are open for the lonely fuckers out there. No offense to anybody, which sucks because this year they weren't. But most people have a few drinks, get together with family. It's a nice time, you know, family bonding. You know, it's not all about Christ. It's about family getting together, having a great time together, okay? But this is just recent. And here's the other thing people don't understand. So this Christian lady is looking at these pagan practices with disgust and saying, okay, go around having sex, doing all this shit. It's like, first of all, from what I read, that's not the case. It's more like what I said. People are going to have sex anyways. Because the act of sexual intercourse creates so much energy that you can literally create a human being out of it. The most godly thing we can do, which, this is magic aside, the most godly thing we can do is the macrocosm and the microcosm. We can create life when two energies get together. When the male energy and the female energy get together. Which is why this happens within you to perform magic on a daily basis. Yearly basis, monthly basis, minutely basis, hourly basis. But if a man and a woman get together, we play the role of the god and the goddess, or Mother Earth and Father Sky, or however you want to look at it. You know, we create life, which is pretty closer to the only real God. It's more like that force of love. When two people get together and make a baby, is more like God than anything. But that's a pagan belief, which used to be in Christian belief. But okay, we're good. But so pagans realized that, okay, well, if we're creating children from this, then there must be extraordinary electricity energy here. This sexual act must mean we're closer to the Creator than ever if the Creator is manifesting babies through us. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't know. They didn't have the biology or the chemistry or the anatomy lessons that we have today to know the processes within the human body. So you can call that science, you can call that God. You can call that your subconscious mind, the divine mind that creates all this within you, that makes this process happen, from the million swimmers that come out of my testicles and penetrate that egg. And think about it. Think about it. All those, that sperm, it's going to be all a bunch of different souls. Is one way to look at it. I mean, you know, you can say, oh no, they're just little dead guys that just end up becoming a soul. Or a soul only comes in the body after the thing has been, okay, maybe. But every one of those little swimmers is a different person. So as they swallow my kids, go and kiss their husbands, you know what I mean? That's because they're a bunch of kids. If you had enough eggs for the amount of sperm that came out of you, you can make that many babies. Because when two sperms penetrate an egg, or one sperm hits two different eggs or whatever, however it works out within the women, that's twins, or triplets, quadruplets. So every one of those is like almost attached to a different soul, is a different being. That's a godly act that comes from my ball sack. And people say, well, don't say that. Oh my God, that's blasphemy. It's like, no, this is our body. It wouldn't be possible without the woman's egg. It wouldn't be possible without my sperm. Together, we create one God. The problem is staying on the same wavelength, getting married, and being able to maintain some type of life together where we can be these little gods that teach our children right from wrong, that eventually teach their kids right from wrong. If you fuck that up, you fuck up the world. Because eventually those kids have parents, and they fuck up their kids, they fuck up their kids. But if you do it right, then they make the world better, and then they make the world better, and then they make the world better. This is how we're like gods. And pagans understood that. So it wasn't just random orgies in the middle of the fucking street. Like, here's the thing. Like, these people had to fucking harvest all fucking year. And then come the winter time, all their meat, all their alcohol, all their food, all that, they had to store to make it through the winter. Especially in North America. So this is why I know she's full of shit. But she said, there's people of North America which have this big fucking drunken orgy and let their kids watch. It's like, no. I mean, maybe they had a drink around that time when they found a nice Yule log, which she also says that's a symbol of a phallic. It's like, no. I think, no. Yeah, they bring a big dick log into the house to adorn the spirit and the fire god. No, it's really not about the fact that they didn't have electricity and that log had to keep them warm all fucking winter. No. It's a big fucking piece of wood dick. Yeah, you make a lot of sense, bitch. But it's like, and then they just said, oh, fuck it. Who cares if we can make it all winter? Let's just have this big fucking drunken orgy and waste all our food and alcohol all in one fucking week or big celebration in December. And who cares if we have to make it in the new year? It's like, none of this makes any logical sense. Not what these people had to go through. And these people had to go through hell times. You could die in the middle of winter. They had way more struggles and things they had to deal with. So a little bit of alcohol here and there as a way to cope with all the fucking tragedy they had to deal with, I don't think is that big of a fucking deal. You know, this bitch wants to pass judgment on people that she doesn't know or she never experienced what they went through. You know what I mean? It's like, go fuck yourself. But in all seriousness, what I read was these acts of sex. Okay, so the church, in my opinion, knows the power of sex. So like I said in my last video, you're going to have sex anyways. You're going to masturbate anyways. You might as well. If you can't think of something specific at the point of orgasm, well then I am so grateful that I've manifested a loving partner so I don't have to masturbate anymore. I'll take that last part out, but I'm so grateful that I have a woman who pleases me sexually, that I please sexually, that I please emotionally, that she please. You know, something that affected every part of that fucking pentagram. You turn that into a symbol, and when you're jerking off, the point of coming, if let's say you're watching porn, well, you try to do at least 30 seconds before you come. Just focus on that. Might be hard though, so you might have to look at the porn again until you get aroused enough, and then put it away and stare at the sigil. Okay? I know it's fucked up, but do it. See if I'm fucking right or not. What do you got to lose? You're gonna jerk off anyways. But what I'm trying to say is these people were doing that. There is power in sex. They realized that there was power in the act of sex. The church weren't sure if they were right or wrong, but they saw their books. They saw what they were saying. They saw that there might have been power in sex. Maybe they even tried it. Nothing the priest did, but maybe they said, okay, well, I'll try this magic stuff and see if we can manifest. And when they realized it's real, they said, we got to stop this. So masturbation was made illegal. Sex before marriage was made illegal. Why is that? Well, because if you think of something that you want at the time of orgasm, you can make whatever the fuck you want to happen. So let's make it a fucking bad act. And even more than that, instead of people realizing that's a good act, let's get people addicted to pornography and sex and have sex everywhere so men can't focus their creative energies into anything productive. And when they do decide to waste their seed, the last thing they're going to do is they're going to take their eyes off that fucking really sexy triple fucking D perfect blonde who's having 4 dicks shoved in her in 5 different ways and mowing in, and these guys are having their way with them, and they're projecting onto that. Let's make these men attached to that, and addicted to that, so they can't take their eyes off that. And, you know, let's make all these fucking crazy toys that can please a woman way better than a man, so that she's so focused on these toys, and she can have all these multiple orgasms, but the last thing she's going to be able to do is even focus on what she wants. And I'm not against any of that. Like, we have toys, we play with toys all the time, me and my wife, you know what I mean? And I've jerked off to porn, so I'm not judging any of this, but I'm not saying that's what it was made for, but it's certainly what it's doing. The sexual act is not a respectable, beautiful act anymore. You know what I mean? So, but they realized this, and so they changed Jew. You're not allowed to do these things. Even more than that, these people were in the streets just fucking and didn't care and did whatever they wanted, raping people and incest, and the kids would get involved, and it's like, that's all horse shit. That's taking this one small story of like sex magic works, and you know, after we had fun and we did whatever, we would perform the act of sex and actively think about us making it through the winter, surviving with enough food and no one going hungry. We would do that to the gods after we give the gods our sacrifices and all that. And from there, you know, whatever happened, happened. They take that beautiful thing, which allowed them to keep going on every winter, and they see that and say, it's this big orgy, it's all this fucked up shit, don't follow them. Yet, when you listen to this thing, the truth of the matter is that these pagans were told at a certain point, because Christianity couldn't stop them out, right? So they're like, okay, what we need you to do is we need you to come to church every once in a while at least. Any taxes and any money you make, some of it has to come to us, and keep practicing your pagan stuff. In fact, we have these gods. Mary's a lot like Isis, or Mary's a lot like Venus, or Mary's a lot like the moon, you know? So just it's not even that big of a switch. So moon, Mary, I mean, it's pretty close. They both like blue. They're both the mother, right? So you can keep honoring Mary. Saturn, you can only switch to Jehovah or whatever, or God if you want there, but basically the same dude in the Old Testament. The New Testament, we talk more about Jesus. He's just like Jupiter, you know? No worries, guys. Just give us your money, come to church once in a while, and practice whatever you want. But the problem is Christmas time, part of their practices were to have this party and do this shit. And some people take things too far. Partying in the streets, causing havoc and all that. From the records I see, there was some crazy shit that happened, and they did have to create the first police force. She says that in this. Police weren't existent up until this point. This is one of the reasons Christmas was abolished. But there was no record of anybody fucking in the street. There's records of lots of damage, people getting too drunk on their booze and not being able to handle their booze. We know that. That happens. You know, some people have problems. Some people might have been fucking disgruntled Christians mad at everybody else getting drunk, so they decided to get drunk too and then fuck everything up. Who knows? But some things did get out of hand because when people get drunk, people get fucked up. These people have a lot to deal with. Nowadays, what happens when people get drunk? Drink and drive. They fucking cause accidents. Like, oh, we're so much more evolved than these people. It's like, no, we're not. There's people rioting, looting, going into the Capitol right now and holding a hostage. Like, who's going to pass judgment on these pagans and say they're primitive when you look at the shit that we're fucking doing right now? They're not primitive. They're the same as us. So most people think, well, they sacrifice people. It's like, okay, let's say they did sacrifice people. Well, if they're sacrificing people and they're doing it the same way the Christians were crucifying people, they were the criminals. Or the same way that doctors are killing people in hospitals is because it's a mercy kill. They're dying anyways. Let's kill them in a way that their brain doesn't experience it. Because let's say you get shot somewhere in the heart and you're bleeding out. You slit your wrist, you're bleeding out. Oh, that's why this shit fucks me up when I talk about it. Oh, if your brain and your nervous system is still attached, and you're going to experience that death. And it's going to be brutal. But the minute it's done, it's done. You wake up and you're 4 years old somewhere else in another part of the world. Or you get to experience that part of your soul that does go somewhere else and keeps learning. It's up to you. If you can advance in this world, then you can be part of that soul that gets to advance. If you don't advance in this world, then you got to redo it until you can advance. But anyways, so the doctors that are killing people today in hospitals, what? We're not sacrificing to the gods now? So back then it's bad because it was just a sacrifice. There was no other circumstances attached to it. Bullshit. There was definitely circumstances. You know, people out there who just assume whatever is told to you without doing research are fucking idiots. These people were either sick or criminals. So they sacrificed them to their gods because they're a waste of space anyways. And that may be or may not be right. But today, we got people doing the same fucking thing. We got the primitive people at these rallies, breaking things, doing a bunch of shit. We're controlled by whoever. They got people going to the White House, killing people. It's like none of these are sacrificed to the gods. At the very least, we should at least sacrifice these fucking people before we kill them to our gods. Maybe we'll get some good shit. Maybe we won't have to deal with coronavirus. This bullshit anymore. But we're going to pass judgment and say they're primitive? We're just as fucking primitive today. Just as. If not fucking more. Because at least these people believed in something back then. Today, nobody believes nothing. No one believes in either Christianity or paganism barely anymore. I mean, there's a lot more people getting into different... But, I mean, we're worse off now than we were back then. All this science and everything telling us that our body is this beautiful thing that can do whatever the fuck it wants to do. Yet, we say, okay, well, it's just us, and we don't have to believe in a god anymore, or gods, or whatever. It's like, man, we're more primitive now than we were back then. Anyways... I'm going to have to collect my thoughts. I'm going to potentially play something else here right now, and this is going to be either to make the case for that there was a girl civilization in the world prior to the age of Aries, being Moses and male and Judaism and all that, but there's some horse shit too. But anyways, doesn't matter. It's either going to be that, or I'm going to make the case for why this is happening. So, like, Trump was said to be in cahoots with Putin and Russian buddies and all that shit. Well, I think it was in 2017, the Russian Putin there was really trying to be, like, Christian and Christ-like and all that. So the stuff happening today, plus this information, can really shed a little bit of light on what might be trying to happen.
Let's go.
So the stuff happening today, plus this information, can really shed a little bit of light on what might be trying to happen. So when I say that paganism and Christianity are very close, they used to be. They're not anymore. Now it's turned into this fucking bastardized fucking religion that judges people more than they should. I mean, judge not lest it be judged. It's right in the Bible, but then they go around judging people. Makes no fucking sense. So everything in the Bible that might be from an old pagan religion makes sense, yet they don't heed their own fucking advice. Because instead of listening to the Bible, they listen to the pastors and priests who have their own fucking agendas and their own fucking ideas and their own fucking motivations. And they don't listen to them. To go past condemnation and fucking judgment on these people while I go fucking touch this little boy in my confession booth. Like, holy hypocrites. Like, wake the fuck up. Go back to the pagan ways that are within your religion, and maybe you'd be better served.
Alright. Yeah. So I'll probably end it there. I don't think I'm gonna keep going. What's on my shirt? Red? On my shirt underneath. Sorry, my daughter. Getting ready for school. I'll just show her. I'll be there in a second. Anyway, so I'm just gonna finish off with this, and then I'll start a whole new video if I decide to make the next part that I was talking about with the women's civilization prior to this. I also have my healing magic would be part 3. It would be like the second part coming up. I actually went to one of my older podcasts and found stuff from Jerry Tennant where he explains it.
How you doing, baby?
Of the organs and how that's like reenacted in your eye, your skin you're in, how many days old it is and all that. And it's a very important part. It's about when the spleen, electrical system gets messed up, all the bad things that can happen as a result of that. So I'm going to be working on those simultaneously because I have the next few days off. Okay, well, squeeze it up like I showed you yesterday. From the bottom, remember? Squeeze it up. Okay, we'll put it in the garbage, baby. You can move, get up and put it there. Come on. Make sure, don't do something for whether they're an elderly person or a child. You don't do anything for them that they can't do themselves. This is how you teach them to do stuff. Keep doing stuff for your 4-year-old over and over again, she will be too late to even get out of bed. Right? That's my beautiful. But anyway, so that's it for today on Right Now. And I'm going to try to get at least one more video up today about the other stuff that I've already mentioned here about the Russian, Trump, Christian connection, and I'm going to right now work on the proof of there was a women's civilization prior to this, and sorry about that, my space got full. Anyway, so I'll be working on the connection of the women who potentially during the age of Taurus. The only reason I'm going through this is because I think it's very important, because like I just tried to prove in this video. Now, feel free to look up the information that this girl is talking about Christmas being banned for the 200 years. Feel free to look it all up when you can. It's not going to be hard for you to find it. If and when I'm done making my second video, I will try to put up links to where you can find that information to back it up. You can totally find the proof that there was pagans and those pagans were doing all these bad things because it's from books, but most of the time those facts are just taken from the witchcraft books and then spun a Christian programmed mindset twist to it. So they start talking about doing sex magic with their partner or whatever the case is. They turn that into orgies. They talk about doing a sacrifice to the gods. They turn that into human sacrifice. You know what I mean? So try to use a grain of salt whenever you're doing this. But anyways, so yeah, that's what I'll be working on next. And I'm going to have another video come up today and potentially even 2. So stay tuned for that shit. And yeah, have yourself a great fucking day.